How to control weeds on lawns on this edition of the DIY Pest Control Podcast.
Welcome to the DIY Pest Control Podcast, where you get the best info for those who want to perform their own pest control. The DIY Pest Control Podcast is brought to you by Nature Pest. Nature Pest has been providing the finest in commercial and residential integrated pest management for structural, lawns, trees, shrubs, and mosquitoes with better control and less contamination at an affordable price. For more info, visit us at naturepest.com.
Hey, welcome back to another edition of the DIY Pest Control Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez. So glad you're here. We're going to be discussing how to control weeds on lawn. And that seems to be a major problem of people trying to figure this out. And I'm going to share a couple of tips, strategies to help you not only prevent weeds, but when you do, how to control them without burning your lawn. If I ever get more calls on people who burnt their lawn while doing weed control, and we're going to explain why this happens and why the lawn gets burned and how to prevent that. One of the worst things that, on top of diseases and insects, that you have to deal with is weeds on lawn. And then you got to decide if that's a grassy weed, if it's a broadleaf weed, or if it's a sedge. And a lot of the times it's very difficult when you look at all these weeds, knowing what's the difference and how to control that. So what I'm going to discuss with you first is how does weeds appear, and how to help prevent that, because it is preventable. A lot of the weed problems that lawns face when they become drastic, it's usually due to a cultural problem. And I'll explain what a cultural problem is. A cultural problem or cultural practice is something that you do that encourages that either insect or disease or weed to appear on your lawn. The number one cultural practice that is done wrong, usually, it's the mowing. Mowing is done either too infrequently or at the wrong height. There are two things that people do to try to get their lawn to last longer between cuts, and it is the direct cause of the weeds. Infrequent mowing, where you're waiting. If you have a landscape company, they're usually coming out every 2 weeks. Why? Because they charge quite a bit to do what they do, and it's very expensive. So if you have a landscape company coming out every 2 weeks during the summer, and your grass is growing with the acid rains out of control, and then all of a sudden you wait too long, and then you scalp that lawn and you cut it way shorter than that cultivar can handle. For example, St. Augustine lawn, which is one of the most used lawns here in Florida, has a mowing height of between 3 and 4 inches. And some people cut that, mow that lawn down really short, called scalping, and it's below the 3-inch mark. And what happens that the grass stresses. It can't reproduce very easily. It needs a lot of nutrients, especially in the summer, a lot of nitrogen to be able to produce all that leaf in that growing season. And you stress out the lawn. Well, now that lawn is short, and it allows weeds to germinate, and to that seed to be able to germinate and then pop up into a weed. And because that lawn is short, if that lawn was cut higher, it would drown out the light, not allowing that weed to germinate. So if you cut it, if you wait 2 weeks to cut it, and then you cut it really short, you're really stressing it. So ideally, the best practice, if to be practical, because nobody can do this perfectly, is to mow it weekly. And pick a day of the week that you're going to mow it, and mow it weekly. If you find that you'll be mowing it weekly, year round, it will grow even in the winter. The roots will be deeper. It would be, because if you mow your lawn at 1.5 to 2 inches high, that's how deep your roots are going to be. So if you mow it higher, then you're going to get deeper roots. And in South Florida, with our calcareous soil, you really need to do that. The number two cultural practice that is violated is watering. People either water too much or they don't water at all. And in the case of watering, you should never, ever, ever water your lawn at night. This will encourage fungus and weeds. Overwatering is most of the weed problems. Like if you have dollar weed is a simple sign that you have too much water on your lawn. And if you cut back the water to maybe twice a week, irrigating deeply, 30 to 45 minutes during the summer. If it does not rain, you should be automating your sprinkler system with a timer and a rain sensor that you can install on it. And that way, if it rains that day, it will not go off. And water early in the morning. The reasoning is you want that water to burn off those leaves as quickly as possible, so it doesn't encourage fungus growth. And this will also, if you water infrequently, a lot of weeds need more watering in order to survive. And if you don't do that, then you won't encourage the growth. So now you've got weeds, and what do? Well, most people go to their lawn and garden center and pick up a bag of weed and feed. And weed and feed is nothing more than fertilizer with atrazine as the active ingredient. Atrazine is about a 50-year-old product that, quite frankly, is on the EPA's restricted use product list. You should not be using atrazine. It is not earth friendly. It does, contaminate soil and groundwater. It's not one of those products you want to be putting out. And I prefer to go with modern herbicides that do not burn the lawn, that do not contaminate water, that are not a restricted use product. To be able to control weeds. And the other product that people use, since they can identify the weed, the hardest thing to do in weed control is identifying the weed. I mean, if you've got a label with 150 species of weed and you've got to try to identify this, it becomes an impossible task. So the makers of these products make it really appealing to you to apply that product to the lawn, because you don't have to figure out what weed you have. And the second product is 2,4-D. Many of the hose and sprayer products that you'll notice, it'll have, if you look at the back of the weed control and it says active ingredients, there'll be like 4 active ingredients that kill weeds. And the reason is they've combined 4 different chemical products into one to control just about every weed. And this allows you to apply it without having to know what weeds you have. The problem is that you can't apply these products when temperatures exceed 85 degrees. So if you're in the summer and you're trying to do weed control in the summer, notice that those products will burn your lawn. You cannot apply atrazine or 2,4-D or these products that come 4 products together because it will burn the lawn. Second is over application. People burn their lawn because they over apply the amount of product needed. If it says 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet, then you apply only 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Do not exceed the label recommendation. They apply it by hand without using a spreader, and it piles up in one area and causes a hole in your lawn. Well, what happens when your lawn burns, that area is now void and weeds can move in very quickly. So not only do you not control your weed problem, but you encourage other weeds to grow in if you burn that area. So what can you do? Well, there are 3 good products on the market that are modern. Now, I got to tell you, these products, modern products, professional products, require you to read that label. It requires you to use exact measurements. It requires you to apply it exactly as it recommended. This is why there's a difference between a product that is sold over the counter and a product that is sold to professionals. The reasons professionals don't burn lawns is because they understand how these labels work. They understand exactly how to apply them and when to apply them. So what you have to do is read that label very carefully. The other thing, these products come highly concentrated, and you need to only use a little bit of that in water per 1,000 square feet. It's always per 1,000, so you need to measure out your lawn. You cannot just apply this product as you wish. You will end up either contaminating your yard unnecessarily, applying more than is legally allowed, or you will end up damaging a lawn. So one of the products that I really like is Blindside. And Blindside is one of those products we use in our business to control. It is expensive. Your bottle is going to treat about a little bit more than an acre per bottle. So it should last you all year long. You only need to use very little, like an ounce per 4 gallons of water of this product to control the pest. Now, you need to read the label, because if your label says you cannot apply it in your city or you cannot apply it in your state, you cannot apply it. And you can't apply more than the label says. So always follow label direction. Whatever dosage I give you, it will not work, because you have to decide what species you have, what type of lawn you have that is on that label, and then apply it. Now, it will not kill every single weed. This is the common problem that people have using professional products, and why these services cost so much, because you cannot just make one application and control every single weed. The label is limited to the weed species that are on that label. So if you applied it and it did not kill your weed, it isn't the product doesn't work. I read the blogs, I read the comments people make about products that they try and don't work, and the reasoning is you didn't use it according to label directions. You need to follow the label directions, and if it didn't kill it, it's not on that label. Then you need to look at another product, maybe like Celsius. And Celsius is another modern product that has a limited list of species that it can control for broadleaf weeds. If it doesn't control it and it's not on one or the other, then you've got either a resistance problem or a weed that is on neither label. There's no such professional product out there that you can apply that is going to control every single weed. It is designed to be used by professionals who understand what weed they're applying and be able to identify that weed and say, that's the product I'm going to use to knock it out. And this is the reason why you pay a professional to do lawn care, is because they actually know this. Now, if you have sedges, some broadleaves, and maybe like glove sedge, then you probably need to add a product like Certainty to control it. And this is like a product that uses a couple of grams per gallon per 1,000 square feet. It's very, very highly concentrated. These products are in the range of $140, $120 a bottle to control these weeds. And then you got to use one or the other, and then the other. So that's what you need to do. But the best thing to do to control weeds, to not use chemicals, folks, is to actually get your cultural practices spot on. Chemical and weed control and insecticide and fungicides are not replacements for sound cultural practices. Also, being able to identify the weed is helpful, because then you don't apply a product unnecessarily. So I hope this helps you. I hope you guys have fun doing your gardening. Be safe, relabel directions, follow the instructions, and that way you'll have a happy, healthy home and lawn. Until next time, folks, have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the DIY Pest Control Podcast. Please remember that although Franklin Hernandez is a certified and licensed pest control operator in the state of Florida, the content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. You should consult your local and state government or cooperative extension service before performing any pest control service. Remember to always read and follow label directions, because the label is the law.